Hi from Perth, Western Australia. My name is Ulrich Engelke. I'm a scientist at Saros Data 61 and a member of the organizing committee for this conference. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional owners of the land that I'm meeting from today, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Viveka Weiley, who leads the design thinking practice at Saros Data 61. Viveka has 25 years of experience in design, technology, and creativity research, focusing on the role of place in geographically distributed collaborative creativity. Viveka co-founded SIGGRAPH Asia, led award-winning R&D teams at the ABC and Choice, and brought the first 1 centimeter resolution virtual Earth to the web. He served as a co-founding member of the Consumer Data Right Advisory Committee and has been appointed to the advisory board of the School of Computer Science at the University of Technology, Sydney. Over to you, Viveka.
Hi, I'm Viveka Weiley and welcome to the future of distributed studios and labs. So in this talk I'm going to try and give you some thoughts on how we can design places and systems to really support collaborative creativity. So first, here's how it works today. An invitation appears in your calendar to attend a meeting by video conference, and on the day, assuming everybody has the software set up okay, then you see all the participants popping up on your screen and they're muting their microphones and having a little bit of social interaction, and then the meeting kicks off and you're hopefully following an agenda and someone will do a presentation and they're taking over all or most of the screen. Or perhaps you'll try and work on something together to actually collaborate, and that's where it gets tricky, right? Because the video conferencing software, it's going to have some whiteboarding tool, but it's no good. Nobody wants to use that. So the text chat's barely functional, but hopefully, well, most likely you're probably already using some functional, useful text chat like Slack. So somebody will go to the Slack and paste in a link to a decent whiteboarding tool, and you'll hit the link and you'll start collaborating in there. But somebody on the call won't be from your organization, so they won't get the Slack link, but someone will realize at some point and email it to them. But in the meantime, someone will start screen sharing so that they can see it at least. So now you have the shared document open in one window while someone's screen sharing the document full screen in the chat window. So all of the participants are these little postage stamp sized people squares on top of, with windows on top of them, so you can't actually see them. But, you know, turn taking and conversation slows down, but you work on the document and it ends up embedded in a Word file, which then the Word file, nobody can get that to sync using Teams, so various versions get emailed around instead. And then that gets turned into an attachment on the email for the next meeting invitation. So kind of sort of works, right? Like, it's functional. You might have a slightly different assemblage of tools, but it's the same situation for everyone, where you have all of these disjointed tools that are kind of being connected and people are explaining them to each other. It's like driving directions from the 80s or something before GPS. So it kind of works, but it's not great. And you're missing out on a lot of the things you get in a real world environment. You're missing social cues and direct collaboration, shared reference space and boundary objects, somewhere to put them and then there's a sort of a spatial communication in the real world that helps people gain a shared understanding of how things and people relate to each other, and you lose that. So there have been various attempts to fix this. I'll share the references in the notes to this talk. Here's the Dive Virtual Office from 1998, and then 10 years later, immersive workspaces from Linden Labs and Rivers Run Red, 2008. Interestingly similar. I think these projects taught us a lot, but primarily they taught us that simulating the surface properties of the real world don't get us very far. Now, one area where virtual worlds are quite successful is entertainment. Here's a virtual Travis Scott in Fortnite giving a concert that drew 12.3 million simultaneous participants, sharded 100 people to a world. And then it's been somewhat less effective for events like the one we're having today. Here's the HTC Vive Ecosystem Conference. They dress the participants up in surprise hazmat suits and poke coronaviruses at them. Anyway, so back to collaborative work today. How does this actually really look? So here's my desk. Now, I wouldn't really be putting a video conference in the center screen like this. I'll usually use that for some kind of shared collaborative object. I'll use a tablet for whiteboarding, and I'll try and often use my phone for the video conferencing part. This is what Bill Buxton calls separating person space from task space, which can be very helpful, right? and we'll talk more about it in a minute. But today's tools kind of fight you on this. They won't let you share a screen from one login. They won't let you log in simultaneously from multiple devices often, particularly the video conferencing tools. The screen sharing takes over the video channel by default. You can't often see the person who's presenting. Now, in a way, the whole idea of presentations, it's very virtual meeting room. It's not really very virtual workspace. So I've been thinking pretty hard about how this could be done better. And I found that the best ideas come from studying real places of collaborative creativity where it's been successful. So here, for example, is the studio of Jon Utzon in Hillevik, Denmark, during the design of the Sydney Opera House. So it's a beautiful light-filled space. To get a handle on it, I made some photogrammetric 3D reconstructions and turned it into a virtual environment to help me explore the space. You can see it's full of reconfigurable objects. These are things that the architect Simon Nicholson called loose parts, and it's inspiring. You see that gorgeous painting on the wall, that's Le Traceur by artist Fernand Léger. And also by going back to the kind of wealth of research that exists in this area. So here, for example, is the mother of all demos from 1968, where Doug Engelbart is introducing us to the whole computing paradigm that we use today. And I assume many of you have seen it. If you haven't, you must see it. And there's a 10 years later sequel as well. And there are many ideas in this thing that are barely realized still. And it kicks off with a mixed reality, live distributed work demonstration. And then here's the media space from Xerox PARC in 1986, where they were augmenting and extending their shared workspaces and their lovely common areas that they had there with analog video. And then later efforts like Rave and Casper introduced controls for various levels of presence and availability beyond what we have available to us in most tools today, so that you can have the door ajar or slightly ajar or fully open or closed. And like, imagine, think about the affordances that we put into a real office in a busy workspace. There's the door, a really well designed one. It will be acoustically isolated if it wants to be, and then the door, but with glass walls and glass doors, but then Venetian blinds, and you can open the door or you can close the door. You can tune the Venetian blinds to any level of opacity. All of these completely configurable and you can lock the door, right? So this is everything from total access control to total openness is available in a real space. And we went to the trouble of designing these affordances, and then we're losing them in the virtual world, which is silly, right? Because we can do anything, it's computers. So and people have, right? In the lab, there have been amazing experiments. Aerial, for example, this is collaboration over paper drawings, allowing engineers to bring participants right into the work. And then there's Hydra, where gaze and attention are dealt with by developing these unobtrusive portable camera screen devices. This is all from the 80s and early 90s, right? Then Hiroshi Ishii bringing everything together with Clearboard, 91 to about 94, I think. And then you can see in this space, the two participants via video link are drawing on as if it was a sheet of perspex between them, so in real time, as if they were, really bringing things together. And there's kind of been a long gap in true innovation in this space. There's been lots of implementation, lots of really strong technical work, but the design has been lagging, right? The design ideas from the 80s and 90s still aren't realized today. There has been a bit of a resurgence. So some of the most interesting work today is being done in a lab in Oakland, run by Brett Victor. This is called Dynamic Land. You can see some of that here. And I've been playing with some ideas. This is the Lamposcope work that I did while at the UTS Creativity and Cognition Studios in collaboration with Matt Adcock at Cyro's Immersive Environments Lab. And it's a system to afford shared sketching using natural materials, using a camera projector system. It's technically very straightforward, but we just aren't using these tools in the design of our systems today. So if we bring it all together, okay, we can imagine that quite small design interventions could vastly improve our current experience. First, right, instead of starting with meetings, we could consider starting with a shared reference space. So this is not just shared documents, but persistent and shared document spaces where you can see how other people see it, right? So there are things in arrangement with other things, and you have a view of the documents, and other people also have a view of the documents, which you can control, but that you can, people can control which documents are available, but then they can also see pervasively who can see what else and share a view of things. These the kind of groupware that we're using today is incredibly poor at this. Where it's as if we're setting access controls in hex, right? It's completely invisible half of the time. and people are coming at things from various different perspectives at once. Okay, so if we can have some shared reference spaces and shared document spaces, then we can embed the artifacts and people in those shared spaces, and then we can allow these personal communications to flow out to various devices. We all have a lot of screens. You can easily have one person to a screen. We can start building devices using cheap parts from the kind of the dividend of the smartphone revolution, right? This is all technically straightforward, but sort of not, right? Because also it's the seams that are hard. We have all of these different incompatible systems, and the seams between the systems and the seams between the virtual and real world are what are killing us here. So we need to be able to seamlessly bring real world objects into the shared virtual spaces, right? So there's my lamp. There we go. High resolution pervasive scanning is available to us using, we can have document cameras and depth cameras and computational photography. So you can see in this imaginary system here, there's a little lamposcope over here. You can fairly easily embed a document camera into with a camera projector system into a lamp. These, and you can use pervasive cameras to scan the whole environment and let people get virtual objects into, or real objects into the virtual world and vice versa, right? So we should also prefer systems that are happy to be embedded in each other. That's to say transclusion, or at the very minimum properly support persistent hyperlinks. And any system that won't allow that is trying to provide everything at once, and I doubt that's going to happen. People are using many systems, and they're going to, we need them to flow into each other. Okay, finally, if you're designing future systems, we need some design principles. So here are some that I've begun to test. The first one is mixed realities. I've just been talking about that. We need, in any fully immersive virtual environment, it's fantastic for entertainment, but you're having to create everything that's in the world. That's incredibly expensive when, a real pencil is right here and it's very powerful. And all of the objects in our real worlds are available to us, and so augmented and mixed reality are really superior technologies for collaborative work because they allow us to bring our real contexts in. So that's principle one. Number two is controlling access. That is surprisingly important. When I went to study how Pixar works, for example, they have a wall around the building and they have various levels of access control. The atrium is open to visitors, but then beyond the atrium, you have to go with a guide. All of these levels of access control are extremely important to them and counterintuitively allow them to build trust within the walls and people to share knowledge more easily. And there's many other things about how that space works that are interesting to talk about, but I'll leave them for another time. But controlling access is very important in making it people able to understand who can see what. It actually counterintuitively, it builds trust. Number three is to support reconfiguration according to the theory of loose parts, right? The more easily movable objects are, the more creativity is going to happen in that space. And then four is be asynchronous. This is both synchronous and asynchronous. Now, each of these types of approaches, synchrony and asynchrony, have their strengths. We know from the cognitive theory of creativity that divergent thinking is most powerfully done when alone. In a quiet, inspiring space, individuals have more creative divergent ideas by themselves than they do in groups, whereas convergence allows us to come together. So coming together physically in synchrony allows us to do things like agree on what the problem is or choose a solution. And divergence allows us to explore different solutions. So synchrony and asynchrony need to be far more thoughtfully considered and used when they're appropriate for the creative cognition that's being aimed for. Then finally, we need to establish ba. This is a word from Japanese cultural theory, which is richer than anything we really have in English. We have space, we have things like location, and then we have space, which is a kind of a blank area of potential. And we have a place, which is a space with a history. Has meaning embedded into it, and often a place with a name, a space with a name becomes a place, and that's we make place by creating meaning in space. Ba has been translated as enabling context. So Hiroshi Shimizu has written a beautiful paper about this, which I can share if you ask me. Or a prepared place, a place prepared for a festival. So this is a place that supports the creative work that's happening inside it. To make this work, the place has to be persistent, it has to be continuous, it has to be seamless, and it has to be inhabited. All of these things together allow us to much more powerfully develop meaning, because meaning is associated with place, and meaning, turning space into place is an incredibly powerful way to build meaning. So it's really worth exploring, not just spatial technologies, but technologies of place. So let's do that. Let's go and design systems that do this. Let's help us create meaningful place in distributed environments. There's plenty to be getting on with, and I look forward to your thoughts.